And thank you for joining us tonight. I'm Tamara Miles. I'm the president of the Poetry Society. Today I was able to listen and occasionally peek at the launch of the Psyche spacecraft mission, which is going to Mars. It's going to take maybe 3 years to get to Mars, and then they're going to this mysterious metallic asteroid by the same name, Psyche. And I was really excited about being able to peek at it and see it launch and see it separate from its base and go into the great unknown to discover more about our interplanetary system. And it occurred to me when the man from NASA said a spacecraft is just a carrier for scientific instruments. Those instruments with which we see the great expanse. It occurred to me that a poem is a carrier of instruments for us to explore the space between us, right? The inner space and the space between us, the space of our world. Space seems to be a theme for me right now. I love the synchronicity of how this always happens, because I was on the plane the other day coming back from a conference in Mississippi, and I was reading National Geographic. It was just absolutely beautiful, photographs from the Webb telescope, and they had a star cradle and a big one of those big fold out maps that you get to, comes with your copy. I was all up in that and so amazed by our universe. And so I had to write a poem, of course. So the poem was called Love Poem While Reading National Geographic on the Plane. I love the scientific vocabulary. The space vocabulary is so rich for writing a love poem about seeing something, seeing the stars, right, in someone's eyes. So anyway, I'm saying all of this to say that I was thrilled then this morning, looking back over Sarah Cooper's work, to discover that she had written a poem. I hope I get the title right. It was Watching You Watch a Rocket Launch, right? A spectacular poem about seeing someone else's pleasure, seeing someone else's delight, the absolute joy that that person that you love has. And you're observing this, and the speaker is thinking, wow, if I'd known you like this so much, I'd have made this happen earlier, right? So that connected with me deeply today. And I just wanted to say that Sarah's known, she has several accolades, which did you have a brochure tonight, Jim? Did you give out a reading brochure? A flyer? Okay, you did. I'm not sure if it has her accolades on it, but I will just mention a few things about her. Let's see. Ashley Jones, Poet Laureate of Alabama, said of Sarah's book, 89%, that it shows us a map of the human heart and all its pumping valves. A map from all angles. What better place to take a spacecraft to, right? Or a poem to the human heart. And our own Ed Madden says the book traces between memory and pain, two places we travel to frequently, I think, but in the company of other astronauts, it's sometimes reassuring. So, she maybe is the author of 89% and Permanent Marker. She's been published in a variety of anthologies and lit journals. She's a PhD candidate in rhetoric, communication, and informational design at Clemson University. Her dissertation project explores how spatial practices intersect with lesbian identity. She's a professor of gender, sexuality, and women's studies there, and a recipient of the Holman Award for Teaching, a 2021 LGBTQ Faculty Experience Award winner, a 2022 Gentry Award winner for Teaching Excellence, and the 2022 T.A. Corrine Fellow at the University of Oregon. Yes.
Eugene's going to go first, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I'm about to get to Eugene. I'm doing this little talk. Okay. Yes. So to prepare our hearts for Sarah's work, the Honorable Eugene Platt will walk us through the space of war, of family, of memory, He has given over 100 readings and is the first poet laureate of James Island. He likes to say he is an octogenarian, but he is also an astronaut, in my opinion, in poetry. So I want to welcome Eugene and Sarah at one time, and then I'll just give a little nod again to Sarah when she comes up. Also, please visit Buxton Books at the back to buy books from Sarah and from Eugene. He has his latest work is Winged on War. Thank you again for this wonderful independent bookseller, Buxton Books, who is just around the corner and it always supports our efforts. And they have suggested that we start going over to the bookstore after our Friday night readings. They're providing wine, by the way. They suggest that we go over there and mingle and enjoy the bookstore instead of maybe hanging out around here. So we're hoping that might start in November, but we welcome your thoughts on that idea. Okay. All right, let me welcome Eugene Platt up to the. Oh, you're in this. Okay. Sorry, I didn't know that.
Thanks, Tamara. All right, let me get a little business out of the way first. This is the 704th time the Poetry Society has met. I want to start out with a door prize. So if everybody has grabbed a pamphlet, a flyer on the way in, you open it, the inner page, there's a text box here that asks you if you would join the Poetry Society. At the bottom of that text box, the last line, it should say, see Jim Lundy after the reading for information. If yours says, see DeBose Hayward for information, you are the winner of the door prize. Does anyone say DeBose Hayward? What's that? You have to show me.
Let me come around and look. I'm a teacher in this bunch.
There's a text box, the very bottom, the last line of the text box. Anyone? It could still be in the file. Maybe nobody took it. All right, so we're not giving up the door prize. All right, I think we spent enough time on the door prize. Let's move on to, I'm going to introduce Eugene Platt. Whenever I introduce somebody, they don't really get a very normal introduction, so I have to apologize for that in advance. Eugene wanted me to introduce him. I wrote the foreword of his second to last book, Nuda Veritas, and in that I said that I talked about my search for a child prodigy poet, and there's essentially no such thing. In order to write poetry, you have to do a lot of living. And Eugene at this point has done a lot of living, 85 years worth, almost. You're close to it, right? Close to 85. Eugene goes way back with the Poetry Society. The first time he ever read for the Poetry Society was almost 52 years ago. It was January of 1972. It was the same month that Richard Nixon proposed a budget that had a record high for of all time budget deficit. The second reading that Eugene read was in 1980. 2 days before Thanksgiving, and it was right after Ronald Reagan was elected president for the first time. The third reading he ever gave for the Poetry Society was in 1991, right after Desert Storm began, the Iraq War. So those were the first three readings that he gave. He was the featured reader. He was the primary reader. He's read three more times as the opener in 2016, 2022, which was during COVID times. We did it, that was completely by Zoom, and tonight. So his, at this point, nobody goes back as far as Eugene. He has also become, we have this year changed our dues schedule and offered a lifetime membership, and he and Judith became our first lifetime members for this drive. At this point, we have 5 lifetime members, which is really great. And I would encourage all of you to help us out. Our costs are really much higher than they were before COVID. And to do something like this costs a lot more than we have money for. And so if you could think about joining, that would be super at any level. But if all of you joined at a lifetime membership level, we'd be all set. Eugene read most recently in Limerick, Ireland, just a few weeks ago. And I would guess that nobody in this room ever has read farther away from home in that short time of span than Eugene. So he wins the prize for that. And I saw him, the last time I saw him read was during Piccolo Spoleto of this past summer. And what I saw was a man at the peak of his powers, someone who is reading better, is a master of reading his own work. And when you hear it in his own voice, you hear the internal rhymes, you'll see for yourself, so I don't have to explain to you. I was also at Judith and Eugene hosted a night where they had an audience and a group of readers for a play based on Eugene's novel. And we were all crammed into that living room, and it struck me as something very special and something unusual, and also kind of harkened back to the beginnings of the Poetry Society, when people, the elite of Charleston, would get together in each other's homes for salons where they would talk about all kinds of things, art and literature and poetry. And I felt like, well, that's what I'm experiencing right now. Both Eugene and I are big fans of Kurt Vonnegut, and he said something that it occurred to me instantly that night, and something I try to think to myself. Vonnegut said that if you notice that you're happy, either exclaim or murmur or think to yourself, if this isn't nice, what is? And that's what I thought when I was at Eugene's reading. I thought, if this isn't nice, what is? How about if you feel happy? I'm not going to force you, but if you feel happy, let's all say that together. If this isn't nice, what is? Ladies and gentlemen, Eugene Platt.
And our guest poet is the winner.
Oh, really?
Miss Sarah is the winner.
Sarah Cooper won the door prize. I'll bring it right to you. Is that going to be the right time?
Just call me when you're ready.
Thank you very much, Jim. Jim is also quite a writer. On the table back there, not the most recent collection, but the previous collection titled Nuda Veritas. The best thing in that book, Nuda Veritas, is a foreword that Jim prepared. It's probably the most insightful foreword that I've ever read in any collection of poems, and I was very fortunate to have it in mine. I'm only going to read 5 poems because I want to leave as much time as possible for Sarah that we're all looking forward to. And I want to thank Tamara, our president, and also Jesse Hilton, who's out there in Zoom land, probably with her dog sitting on her side. I want to thank them for giving me the honor of reading on the same program with someone as accomplished as Sarah. Okay, just 5 poems, and we'll begin with one titled The Good Vet. I would imagine that most of us have experienced the sad phenomenon of saying goodbye to a beloved pet. And my wife Judith and I had this experience a couple of years ago when we had to say goodbye to a beloved old corgi named Henry. After 12 or 13 years, the hindquarters just gave out, and I understand that's not uncommon for aging corgis. They call it intervertebral disc disease. The good vet expresses empathy with kindly blue eyes, but denies me the comfort of hearing my beloved old corgi could be stabilized by the most potent drugs available or any kind of surgery. Intervertebral disc disease, she says, is common with aging corgis, bred to be short enough to avoid the swift kicks of cattle, yet agile, fast enough to fulfill their herding instinct, sympathetic, sensing I'm about to cry. She says we could try acupuncture. And I leave what will be a last hope for any corgi. Soon there's the first treatment, long needles penetrating his haunches, with two more 2 weeks apart to follow. Even so, just a few days later, I must return him to the good vet. No, not for acupuncture again, but alas, another kind of needle. One she says will make easy for him, though not for me, his solo journey to another realm. The next poem is a rather long one, titled Waiting for the Train at Valley Broker Junction. And I've only tried to read this poem once or twice before by myself, and reading it by myself did not go over very well, because as Tamara knows, who's going to assist me with this, you know, it can be subtitled A Poem for Two Voices. It's written with a personal voice and alternatingly with an encyclopedic or Wikipedic voice, impersonal. So I'm going to start off by reading the personal voice stanzas, and Tamara will follow immediately with the impersonal.
Okay, sounds good. Okay.
Okay, and this comes out of one of my many trips to Ireland, and on one of them, I was at a little train station, a very isolated place, Ballybropey, in County Laois, and here we go. Waiting for the train at Ballybropey Junction. An American from the deep South, a region where tradition trumps trends and ancestors are still revered. I remember my grandmother wistfully saying, some of our own are known to have succumbed to starvation during Ireland's horrific Great Hunger. They are said to have been buried in a bog near here. If so, long ago, their rotted remains may have been cremated in the peat-burning fireplace of a more fortunate family.
According to a recent census, the number of Americans claiming Irish ancestry is 7 times the population of Ireland itself. On St. Patrick's Day, they wave tricolor banners or wear badges that say, "Kiss me, I'm Irish."
Earlier today, I pilgrimaged to this pastoral place to pay belated homage to their memory. And now, waiting for the train at Ballybropey Junction, I sit and muse about those maternal ancestors, if only they'd prevailed in the rebellion of 1798, or having failed, they'd taken the train, then passage on a boat to well-fed America or Grand Canada, before the doomed potatoes began to blacken.
The Great Famine began with failure of the potato crop in 1845 due to Phytophthora infestans. A deathly sweetness soon perfumed the air.
I sit and shiver in a vertically moving mist, indeed, a drizzle too light to drench. So I know the Irish aren't insane to say of such rain, but 'tis soft.
Because potatoes were relatively easy to cultivate prior to the Great Famine, the Irish poor had become overly dependent on them for subsistence. The average adult male ate 13 pounds a day.
I sit as the rain stops and actually appreciate having a wait in this quaint corner of County Laois. Too soon an intruding train will breach its peace and diesel me back to Dublin.
Nearly 9 million people lived in Ireland the year the Great Famine began. Within a half decade, 1 million had died, another million or more had migrated.
I sit outside an almost empty station, sharing its serenity with several cawing crows, while shadows play chase with patches of sun. Now, the filial obligation fulfilled, fatigued, my mind would rather meditate on nothing.
Although the deaths abated, the diaspora continued, mainly west, enriching the rest of the world with Irish wit, wisdom, well-being. Today, about 7 million live on the island of Ireland, 5 in the Republic, another 2 in the north.
I sit and listen to the breeze humming through trackside trees, as if it were mischievous fairies, bewitching away all the warmth usually associated with the month of May.
Irish literature has been immeasurably enriched by fairy tales rooted in spiritual beliefs and superstition. Their compatibility with Christian tenets is remarkable. W.B. Yeats, winner of the Nobel Prize in Literature in 1923, had a lasting fascination with Irish folklore.
As train time nears and other travelers enter the station, I stand, journeying these melancholy natives in mourning the stillborn spring, but diplomatically determined not to challenge the old farmer grousing about my country's lunar landings, lossing up their cherished weather, compromising his crops.
Any conversation with an Irish man or woman is likely to include a mention of the weather. However, whether fair or foul is in the eye of the beholder. In truth, Ireland has a temperate maritime climate due to the vast, fast-flowing Gulf Stream. Temperatures rarely go below 32 degrees or above 68.
Under a faint full moon, I venture to say cordially to the cranky old fellow, well, sir, at least those landings were a century too late to have caused the Great Famine. And I take comfort in an ancient Celtic blessing.
May the road rise up to meet you. May the wind be always at your back. May the sun shine warm upon your face, the rains fall soft upon your fields, and until we meet again, may God hold you in the hollow of his hand.
Very much. Thank you very much, Tara. The next poem is also long, but then it's followed by the last two, which are very short. This poem, titled Slaughter of the Innocents, was occasioned by the horrific event, the mass shooting at Sandy Hook Elementary School in Newtown, Connecticut in December 2012. The poem enshrines the names of the 20 children killed in that tragedy and is dedicated in memory of them. The poem begins with an epigraph, a few verses from the Gospel of Matthew, and also throughout the poem, the Lord's Prayer is woven into it. slaughter of the innocents. Then Herod, when he saw that he had been mocked of the wise men, was exceedingly angry and sent forth and slew all the children in Bethlehem. Then was fulfilled that which was spoken by Jeremiah the prophet, saying, in Ramah was there a voice heard, lamentation and weeping, and great mourning, Rachel weeping for her children, and would not be comforted, because they are not. To say such a slaughter was bad is badly understated. Indeed, it's a monarchical monstrosity, a misdeed of biblical proportions. And 2 millennia later, how unlikely it would seem, as if in delirium or drug-induced dream, for Herod to appear anew in Newtown, Connecticut, a place so far removed, though no less bucolic, than Bethlehem before his slaughter of the innocents. From the complacity of Christmas, a seasonal naivety we used to enjoy with impunity, we are awakened by Rachel weeping again, wailing like hell for Anna, Allison, and Abiel. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Before the curse of Herod overwhelms us, tell us, O Lord, pray tell us if truly this is thy will, if we must give you back little Benjamin, Jessica, and Jack. As we near another nativity of your own son, tell us what can be done with closets full of new clothes, trinkets, and tinker toys Rachel has bought with thought and caring for each of her precious little girls and almost baby boys. What will she do with all those gifts so lovingly selected? The boots and books, the bikes and games for Catherine, Caroline, and James. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. But cut her some slack, merciful God, if Rachel was slow to forgive the Herod who broke her heart, the murderer, the Madeline, Chase, and Charlotte. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. The evil of Herod's legacy is alive, lurks in our communal psyche, tempting us to accept, if not to condone, the slaughter of innocents other than our own in places as far-flung as Afghanistan and Hiroshima, even as we mourn and do not understand the killing so obscurely obscene of Olivia, Jess, and Josephine. For thine is the kingdom. Let it be a gun-free place of peace, one where there can never be a slaughter of innocents, a celestial sanctuary where Rachel need never weep again, a scene of fun, a never-ending sunshine, safe and Sylvan, for Daniel and Dylan, in the power and the glory. And now, with hope that trumps despair, we commend to your care for the rest of eternity what was Rachel's fleeting glory in Grace and Noah and Emily forever and ever. Amen. In closing, these two short poems that were inspired by my daughter when she was a baby. The first one, Out of New Life, inspired by the sight of her on the day of her birth in her mother's arms. And the second one, New Priorities, inspired on one of the many innumerable occasions when I just went in to check on her as she slept in her crib at night. I would imagine that many of you can relate to these emotions. New life. gurgling at your fountain of youth, close to the heart whose beat was once your own. Even your coos speak the contentment of a new life impurred only by the sins of your fathers. But you bring hope even to them, dear daughter, and yours is like a second coming. Your priorities. My preoccupation is no longer empires. I tiptoe in darkness to witness your blankets rise and fall. Then, bending over the slats of your crib that remain silent centuries through the night, I become reacquainted with a God I knew in my youth and say a wordless prayer of hope for your future, which is a future of all the world, while listening for the sweetest sound I have ever heard, your breathing. Thank you very much.
And now we're pleased to welcome Sarah Cooper.
Thank you, Eugene, for that wonderful set. Can everyone hear me okay? Yeah, okay. And thank you to the Poetry Society for having me this evening. I'm going to start off tonight by reading a new poem. And this poem was written for Maureen Seaton, who was a wonderful poet who just passed away in August, and she had lived with terminal breast cancer for 6 years. Dustin Brookshire, who is a poet and also a literary editor, decided to create a chapbook of poems in Maureen's honor, and he contacted me in July and told me about the project, and I said, of course. She had been a mentor for years, and to him, to me, to many poets. And so I didn't know she was going to pass away in August, and she did, but the chapbook is coming out shortly. So I think the only way we can really honor people like Maureen is to write poems for her, with her, and then to continue to write with her. So the poem that he asked us all to respond to was her famous poem, When I Was Straight. And the last few lines of that poem that she wrote are, I thought now that even my id has turned against me, there is something fragile here to lose, exquisite truth, and I did. So this is my poem. When I was straight, other straight people told me my body had purpose. They promised my body could make another body, that my body would carry a being waiting to be. How did they not know how terrifying that sounds to a child? When I was straight, someone I loved told me I wasn't, and I didn't understand what that meant, except that I was different, that I was wrong, and that difference was a separation, a divide between me and the people I loved. So I tried to understand what my differences were, and I took a knife's tip, dug them from me. I deposited my differences in shallow graves in a riverbed. I prayed for heavy rains to wash them downstream to some other body who could embody being not straight. Years later, when I tried to excavate them, I found muddy holes in the shore where a frog had laid her eggs and tadpoles swam in my emptied not straightness. They thrived there. So my first book of poems is called Permanent Marker, and it's a collection of poems that are about my brother who passed away 10 years ago now. And I didn't realize what I was doing in this book until I saw my dad a few days ago, and he was talking about siblings being a connection to the past. And I think that's exactly what I was doing. So he is not one for words, but he gave me words for this after the fact. I'm just going to read one poem from it. It's called The Lump. The lump has been under my left breast for years. I do not fear this lump. It has never been examined or prodded or poked. No biopsy would conclude its contents. For years, I was ashamed others would see the scar, the discolored flesh. But last winter, I stepped from the shower, saw the lump, ran my still wet fingers over it, and remembered your face in shock as you realized you had shot me. Shoulders pulling back from aim position, eyes expanding into disbelief and possibly sorrow. Last year, I chose to love the lump, showed my girlfriend, and told her a story of how a BB bullet branded my body and how you were generous to leave something for me. So the book that I'm going to read from more so tonight is called 89%. It came out in the spring of 2022, and it is a series of lyric poems that are divided into 5 parts. And they are largely about my mother, who was dying of cancer over a span of 4 years, and then me kind of coming into adulthood and queerness and thinking about what that means and how we both were embodying things of difference. So I'm going to start with a poem. It's called My Mother as Lymph Nodes and Liver Lesions. And this collection of poems has sprinkled quotes throughout it, and they're kind of floating on pages. And they come from a poem that was originally titled Truths or Advice from the Matriarch. And I decided to break that poem up and to sprinkle these kind of pieces of advice throughout the book. And the purpose of that was to center the voice of someone who could no longer speak. And I think we do this often when we talk about thinking back, but really we're pulling history to us. And so that's the move here. And this is a prose poem. It has one of these floating lines before it. Everything is temporary except red wine stains and stretch marks. My mother as lymph nodes and liver lesions. As the doctor exits the exam room, she reaches for my hand, and I pull her entire body onto my lap as she stares at the gastrointestinal diagram like it's a map of the stars, searching for constellations, seeing only organs, glands, tissues. She whispers, "Do I need my liver to live?" I stare at her, feel her pelvic bones press into my thighs, her hands interlocking around my shoulders like she's a child, asking if she has to get the flu shot. Let's try to keep it, I offer. I smell the loose skin on the back of her neck, watch a vein pulse, trace a map, clavicle to lymph node. So my longest relationship, aside from my parents, is with Emily Dickinson. And I really adore her work for its creativity, for its candor, but also for its longing. And so this poem has an epigraph from some of Emily Dickinson's work. The poem is titled, My Love Asks When I Began Writing Poems, and the epigraph reads, For often I part with things I have loved, sometimes to the grave, and sometimes to an oblivion rather bitterer than death. Emily Dickinson, 22, middle writings, mid-1850s to mid-1860s. I was 12. It read, I love Katie D. Her hair falls like willow branches over freckled shoulders. These poems were exits from my body. No one taught me how to pass, how to correct myself, how to straighten. I learned to keep a straight face. You think it's my game face, but love, I want to tell you, it is the face that kept me from showing everyone all the wanting my mouth hungered for. By 16, my bitten cheeks were scar tissue canvases hanging from a mouth chewed quiet. My molars finally learned how to hold skin without biting, without clenching, without beckoning the blood to trickle down throat. In my treehouse, I burned those poems. let flicker grow to flame, watched edges curl to black, read words in reverse until I met Fireline. My love, all those poems are ashes below 2 trees that once suspended me. I buried those traces on windy days, offered them breezy escape. My stoic face was no contender for words about loving girls, about wanting to love girls. Love, I have burned and buried my youth. Whenever my life is over, honor those poems, those girls. Promise you'll cremate me. So I have lots of historical crushes, Emily Dickinson, also Gertrude Stein. And I like her for her Birkenstocks and socks that she wore, that we all still do, which is nice. But what I really like about her is her concept of the continuous present and the notion that every time we speak something, we are creating it anew. And every time we explain something, we aren't retelling it, we are telling it anew. And so that poem, this poem is kind of taking up that idea, and it has a line before it. Tent dancing, camping on bars, and skinny dipping are always fun, but do it when you're young. The recovery is hell when you're old. Cannonball. Part 1, cannonballing, was how I met her. Mess of salt surfer strands, sunshine sprigs flying, a wave grin, bounce back to grass slivers, bleak ground. I imagine her years later, cannonball body rolling across Caribbean cliffs, tromping on trails, laughter bellowing, palm trees echoing the boom. Did you want to cannonball from that cliff? You know the one everyone else could merely rope swing from. What if I were swimming by? What if I were drowning? Part 2, technique. If you tuck hard and clasp arms around shins, hold opposite leg with hand and push your head towards your knees, your ass will splat perfectly on the surface. Your ass splatting the surface being splat by your ass. As asses splat, yours would surpass the splats before. I am watching your ass to see the splattering water splashes from your ass. There are droplets on my toes from your ass. This is what a hard tuck gets you. So this next poem also has a floating line prior. Don't do anything to your body, gravity will impact. Fireplace. Your clavicle V's toward throat's concave insert, breasts still taut, nipples brown, shoulders sturdy, veins sprawling toward chin, a scar holding your torso together. You rub lotion over your forehead, eyes, cheekbones now glisten, lubriderm smeared over elbows. Fastening a bra with one hand, you talk to me. Stand in front of the fireplace, chattering about dad, his doctor's appointments, the referral to a specialist, diagnosis, sciatica. You want him to be well, and for a moment, we both forget you are not. Mom, you look good, I announce with a wink. I haven't seen your body unclothed in over a year. When we were living in a hospital room together, I'd change your sheets, your gown. We brushed our teeth at a sink. You wanted to stand for that. It was out of dignity. It was out of fear you could no longer stand. It was out of a need to tell the hospital bed you didn't need it. Today, you dress in front of the same fireplace we huddled around after snowy days, the warming, luring of cats for naps, the same fireplace you sucked embers from imploding the Red Devil. Today, your legs bow, thighs separate, muscles missing. Unashamed, I stare at your body that birthed me, the one that engulfs me still. So I like playing with other documents to write from. And one of those ways I do that is with found poems. I'm sure some of you have also played with that a bit. But a found poem uses a document to extract words or phrases from and then implements them into one's own writing, or sometimes is a standalone poem on its own. And so that's what this poem is. My mom was kind of famous for just handing me stuff saying, can you read this and tell me what it is? And I'd say, sure, and then do it. And so she did that one day, and I like took the document home and read it. And it was a study that she was asked to be a part of for the kind of cancer that she had, which was colon cancer. And I was just kind of horrified by this idea of handing a patient information and saying, read this and decide if you'd like to participate or not. It's good for other people. It's probably not good for you. And so I wrote this poem about that, and it has a line before it. Your dad's family is special, so treat them as such. Special people who should be caged, studied and documented, but never set free. The study. Someone wants to study your body, not the way I study bodies, in a way that dissects your tissues, syringes your blood, and slides cells under microscopes. They want to watch your cancer stem cells grow. In addition to the treatment described in this consent form, the study sponsor would like to store blood and tumor tissue samples for future scientific research studies. Where will you be stored? May I come pull the vial labeled Colleen Margaret Willette Cooper 9/19/1952 from its cabinet when specimens are all that remain? When I need you to tell me how to fold a fitted sheet or the amount of time one should work with pastry dough. I like form as well. I think it's a way to think about how we can constrain our work while remaining creative. And also sometimes when we're far too emotionally invested, we need containers, maybe even cement file cabinets for that matter. So this is a pantoum, and pantoums are poems with 4-line stanzas, and the second and the fourth line of one stanza become the first and the third of the next stanza. You'll just kind of hear the echoes. And so that's the purpose of this. And it comes with a line before it. Regifting is a gift. Pantoum for departing. If you're still living, consider who will autograph your tombstone. What human will wait till you're lowered and chisel you a love letter in granite? Who will autograph your tombstone? She asked me, lying in her deathbed, then chiseled letters of love with granite teeth and bit her lips, chewed cheeks. She asked me, lying in her deathbed, if I had a poem that rhymed, and bit her lips, chewed tattered cheeks. She said she needed something to focus on. If you had a poem that rhymed, I'd remain respectfully fascinated, she said. We needed something to focus on, needed syncopated sounds. I'd remain respectfully fascinated on the rhythm and repetition of our need for syncopated sounds. She knows she can't do this alone. On rhythm and repetition, what human will wait till you're lowered? She knows she can't do this alone. If you're still living, consider. So this is the final poem of the book. And I wrote it because my editor said, how are you going to finish this? And I said, I don't know. I think we just end it. And he's like, I think you need a poem. And I was like, okay. So I wrote this, and some of my very kind poetry friends helped me edit it very quickly. I think this is the fastest poem I ever wrote. I think I wrote it in 36 hours. So The Thrashing. Still, I tread water anytime I try to float. It's the stillness I can't rest in. The summer you taught me to swim, an instructor said, hold your child. We're going to dunk them on 3. I hovered supine above your arms and into your eclipse face whispered, promise you won't dunk me, okay? And you nodded, and I went back to watching clouds float. I was trying to show you I was good at being still when water rushed through my nostrils. I thrashed to surface, sputtering, coughing. You never apologized. My recollection, now confused, if you ever agreed to not submerge me. The pull of my body underwater, the chlorinated gulps, blare of my own yelps as I found my way back to air, back to your sunlit body. That day, I thought you wanted me to feel what dying would be like. Today, I know I had to learn how not to drown. All right, so I have one last poem to read. This is also a new poem. And I was driving down here with my spouse and she said, are you going to read a poem about me? And I said, absolutely not. And I don't think poems are about her. I think they're for her. So that's what this poem is. And it has an epigraph. How fragile we are between the raw, few good moments, Jane Hirschfield, vinegar and oil, lottery tickets. You call to say I got them, a tone often modest, now exudes enthusiasm. I hear your smile when the numbers 12, 23, 10, 13, 4 tumble into our conversation. Of all the ways I cherish you, your excitement of lottery tickets is one I've never said. You, my valuer of facts, my decision maker a la data, my yes or no, are most comfortable when you can approximate your position to certainty. I should tell you, I love you for choosing to purchase what frees you. Your tickets, the subtext of how close we came to being together at the wrong time, at the life too soon, has never been lost on me. We only became once, and really, that's all you need. One right ticket, one sequence of numbers that aligns with chance, and it's yours, the whole world, yours on a piece of paper, while you gaze at what you chose, at what you made. One day, many nights from now, we will go to dinner. I will squint at the menu printed too small, ask, is the third entree salmon or snapper? And you will squint too and say it's swordfish. One day, I hope we will sit in that scene, holding our lives together with all we've been and all we've decided not to be. I still don't know what it means to grow old, but I'd like to grow into that chair at that table with a candlelight not quite bright enough for me, but just enough for you.
That was wonderful, huh? I would like to invite you to the workshop tomorrow. It's in the same location here at 10 o'clock. Ashley will be leading us in some wonderful exercises. And also don't forget to check out the Buxton Books table at the back. And if you have any questions about anything, talk to me or Jim. Jim, we have Willie Lee Kennard III in November. Willie Lee Kennard III in November coming up. And the guest reader, I believe, is Cassie Primo Steele. Hope to see you then. Enjoy some wine and grapes and cheese, please. Thank you.